Hi there, this is Ron Myers, and this is another recording in my series of interviews exploring who is doing what with regards to sustainability in the aesthetics industry. And today it's my pleasure to introduce two people from Lynton Lasers. Now, Lynton are a multi-award-winning British-based manufacturer of medical-grade aesthetic technology. And firstly, I'd like to welcome Hayley Jones, who's the commercial director at Lynton Lasers, and Martin Cooper, who works as a conservation specialist for Lynton. So welcome both of you, and thank you for your time. Martin, can I start off with you, please? Can you tell me a little bit about the sustainability initiatives that Lynton have introduced into their business model over the last few years?
Yeah, okay. We started off actually measuring our carbon footprint. So we're doing this in line with the greenhouse gas protocol and trying to get a pretty good baseline as a realistic idea of what our overall emissions are. We started that a couple of years ago. We then started looking at offsetting some of our sort of travel emissions and energy emissions. And we got to a point last year where for the first time we got our full carbon footprint. So we know what that is now. And we've put a small team together that has come up with various ideas, various initiatives, which we can sort of employ in the company to look at reducing our emissions. Mm-hmm. And then what we're doing is actually offsetting the remaining emissions that we've got there. So we got to the point now where last year we were carbon neutral for the first time.
Excellent.
So essentially what we're doing is we're putting plans in place to try and reduce emissions where we can, and then looking to offset what we can't reduce at the moment.
Yeah.
So to give you some examples, what we've done last year, we've essentially gone through our buildings and we've replaced all the lighting with LED lighting where we can, and also installed infrared sensors, motion sensors in the rooms, which will that'll basically cut our electricity usage. We've also installed a couple of electrical vehicle charging points. And we've made those freely available to all staff. Okay. So the idea there being that trying to encourage people to maybe, if they can, switch over to electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles, and also where we can maybe within our own fleet look to replace some of the vehicles with hybrids. So we've now got a couple of plug-in hybrids there, which is cut our emissions a little bit. And we also introduced a number of initiatives throughout the company looking to reduce our paper usage last year. So various things like, for example, in our HR department now, I think pretty much all our stored records are now paperless. We're using QR codes at exhibitions to cut down on the amount of brochures. Mm-hmm. Training tests that have gone online now, and we've developed e-learning portfolios for the various qualifications as well. So all of these things have added together and helped us to sort of cut our emissions from last year.
Excellent, thank you, Martin. And obviously, you know, the carbon emission side of things is obviously it's a very difficult thing to actually, you know, kind of assess as well, and actually work out how much how much emissions you have, and then also how to reduce them, and then also then what you do from a carbon offset perspective, because that's a whole other area as well. But yeah. Hayley, what I wanted to do was to ask you something along another side of things that's often missed in the whole sustainability side of things, which is corporate and social responsibility initiatives. And I know you've done quite a lot in that. So I wanted to ask you how important it's been in terms of how you operate your business.
It's kind of interesting because at Lynton, in some way, we've actually been doing this since we started nearly 30 years ago, because what some people may know, but most people probably don't, is there's a division within Lynton where we do laser cleaning. And this is where we actually you can use some laser technology to clean very, very old artifacts and statues and very, very delicate items of history, really. It's never been a particularly great side of the business financially, let's say, but it's always been something which has been really important to the owners of Lynton, because there's only really us and one other company in the world that can build this kind of technology that can actually sustain these artifacts for future generations. So in a way, that in itself is like a corporate social responsibility sort of initiative. It's anything that you do which is for the greater good, really.
Yeah.
So that's sort of been Lynton's DNA, and we're just a nice bunch of people, so we do like those sorts of projects, really. But over the years, we've actually been doing quite a few little bits and pieces. Like, for example, for our team members, we introduced, a few years back now, counselling sessions, so free counselling sessions. So anyone at Lynton who's struggling with something can have 6 sessions with a counsellor, just to help them through, a difficult time. Just little things like we give our team members their birthday days off.
Mhm.
And yeah, we do things like we have a charity fund as well. So once a quarter, anyone that works within Lynton can make a nomination for a charity that's close to their heart, and we'll actually do a charity donation once a quarter as well. And it's not huge amounts, it's just a little bit, but that's sort of the point of corporate social responsibility, that if everybody just did a little bit, then all of these things make the world a better place, don't they?
Absolutely. And I think, part of it is, and it has to come from the top, and I know it does within your business as well, is that the directors have to, understand that, well, I suppose the importance of this in terms of how they operate their business. And it's obviously important to them personally as well. So, what sort of impact do you think these initiatives have had on, Lynton as a business and your team?
So, I can't speak for every employee at Lynton, but I'm really proud that we do this as an employee. So I do think that's, and I know Martin's been championing the environmental elements in particular. And it certainly helps with employee engagement. I guess other things are, it's had a definite financial impact. So we recently won a tender with a college, because purely on the basis that we'd got really good green credibility. So there's a number of different reasons why, or a number of different ways that it's had a positive impact in the business. I think overall most of that is our team members just feel proud that we do things along these lines, and that's something which is nice to find in your employer.
Yeah, excellent. And it's really interesting what you said there as an aside about winning a tender. And obviously this is, governments particularly, or bigger businesses now, are looking at environmental social governance and sustainability development goals and all things related to sustainability when they're considering making purchases. And it's not just the cheapest price, which is why I think, we've hit a tipping point in terms of looking at these things and kind of going, well, it's not just a drain on resources and potentially profit, it's actually good for business.
Yeah, definitely. I think, not only are some of these initiatives helping us save money, but they are, I believe, helping us attract and retain good staff as well. And like you say there, employers, if we want to carry on supplying to people like the NHS, for example, then we need to be doing this. They've already said that they're not going to be buying from suppliers who aren't doing these sorts of things in a few years' time. So and like Kaylee said there, we've already won a tender on the basis of this kind of stuff. So yeah, first and foremost, I think we believe it's it's the right thing to do, and that we have a responsibility to run the business in a way which minimizes our sort of negative environmental impact.
Yeah,
but it also, it is good for business as well. So it's why wouldn't you do it?
Excellent. So I have a very specific question for you as well, as obviously one of the premier laser manufacturers in the industry. Although lasers, and I'm sure yours last a long time as well, eventually some of them come to the end of their useful lifespan. And you see a lot now of lasers kind of coming up secondhand, but of course a number of them there's just not an outlet for them anymore because they're just old technology. What sort of advice do you have for clinics about how they decommission sometimes like 100 kilograms of device?
Yeah. Well, basically it's electrical equipment, so it's governed by the WEEE regulations. So the weight was that waste electronic equipment. So I would suggest that the clinic contacts their manufacturer.
Right.
And if the clinic requests it, then the manufacturer, I believe, does have a responsibility to dispose of it correctly. So obviously there may be costs involved in collecting equipment and so on. But strictly speaking, yeah, if the clinic requests it, it is down to the manufacturer. I mean, for example, if we get a system back, then we will look at it and look at what parts we can salvage for further, sort of service work and so on. And we'll also look at the systems to see whether we can refurbish them and just prolong the life. If we can't, and if we have got the various bits that we can take off it, then that's the point at which we will. I think we have a contract with a licensed specialist waste contractor who basically they will collect it and dispose of it correctly. So they will be taking the various precious metals and so on out of the circuit boards and so on, and doing what they can with those to recycle them as well.
Sure.
I would say, yeah, contact your supplier or your manufacturer.
Excellent. That's really useful advice. So finally, one final question. What I'd like to do is just to ask what other plans you have in the future around sustainability issues, targets, goals, or initiatives that you plan to do at Lynton.
Well, firstly, we've set a target for this year. We've committed to being carbon neutral this year, and we're looking to reduce our CO2 emissions per £1 million turnover by I think it's 17.5% for this year.
Okay.
And we've identified for that a big area for us is our travel. So we have I think we have about 25 fleet vehicles, so all the sales staff and service staff and trainers and so on, and we do a lot of miles in those. So one thing, and that is by far our biggest contributor to our carbon footprint. So we're identifying ways in which we can cut the amount of travel, which could have quite a big impact actually on our overall carbon footprint. So whether that's more efficient route planning, more efficient vehicles, that kind of thing, we'll be looking at that this year as the main way of reducing emissions.
Okay.
Hayley,
yeah, we always have a lot of ideas. So we meet quite regularly, don't we, Martin? And we've got a little group of us at Lynton that sort of meet quite regularly, and we have all these ideas, and we have a policy that we've sort of written, and we put ideas on the board, but we don't want to fall into the trap of greenwashing. We're not going to say we're going to do something unless we know we're going to do it, really. So we've set these very clear targets for us environmentally, and we will achieve those. Everything else is sort of related to supply chain, really. So up or downstream. The next big step, I think, for Lynton is starting to look at how can we assist our clinics with being more sustainable, because obviously as part of Lynton we have a fully functional aesthetic clinic, so we know what the ins and outs of are making that more sustainable. Looking at that, and then also looking through our supply chain. So as an example, in marketing, we hate printing brochures, we hate printing leaflets and things like that, but there is still demand for that from some clinic owners. So it's about, okay, if we do have to print those brochures, then what are our supplier options? Starting to look at those now, and obviously choosing the ones that are making the good decisions themselves as well.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah, it's interesting because I think you've got that. You do have two hats there, don't you? As a fully functioning clinic owner, so you've got that that angle there where you are actually operating that and kind of thinking, well, I've got to buy all this stuff to run this business. So how does that operate? And then as a distributor manufacturer, being able to respond to your customers' needs and inquiries. And I think particularly around the travel side of things, which, as you all know, within this industry, there's thousands of representatives going up and down the country every day. And probably there you've got two aspects of that. Number one is kind of the speculative sales call, I suppose, where I think more of that can be done through this type of route. And I think hopefully there are more and more clinic owners out there now who aren't demanding that somebody comes and sees them face to face for a speculative business, discussion. Training's a little different, but again, if you can focus people to come to you for training, and I know you've got great training facilities as well, instead of sending people all over the country for training, that's another option as well. So I think it has to come partly as well from clinic owners, and for them to think about the impact of their requests on suppliers, and you know the resultant carbon emissions, you know, and costs, I suppose, you know, as a result of that. I mean, I know diesel and petrol are coming down in price, so it's still very expensive. So
Yeah.
you know, and running electric cars, you know, the capital costs for that are not cheap still. So it's difficult. But well, that's lovely. Is there anything else that you'd like to sort of mention or discuss at this stage?
Just that you'll see possibly some publications about Lynton that mention the term hive. So just to give you a bit of background, I mentioned earlier that we sort of feel like we've been doing corporate social responsibility in lots of little forms for quite a long time now. And so we did sit around the table and say to ourselves, well, we you know, we need to put a sort of stamp on this and call it something. So we came up with the name Hive. And so Lynton's CSR is kind of rolled into our Hive initiative. And for those of you that know as well, you'll know that we're a spin-off from the University of Manchester. And the bee is a symbol of Manchester worker bee. And that's where the hive has come from. So if you see it, you'll understand a bit of the background there.
I love that. That's brilliant. You know, I must admit, I've always admired how Lynton operate their business anyway. And I think, you know, you've got a fantastic reputation that's been built with regards to the technology and particularly the customer services that I know that you provide as well for clinics. But I think especially as a British-based manufacturer, I think my admirations has just grown really in terms of, you know, you being a leading company, a leading laser company that's making meaningful changes in relation to you know, these wide range of sustainability issues that affect us all. So thank you, Hayley and Martin, for your time today. I'm absolutely sure that we'll meet again and discuss this important topic at some time in the future. So
thank you, Ron.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.